All right, we are live. Good evening. It's late night CPS. Beat CPS late night. I'm attorney Vincent Davis, and I'm joined by my co-host, Miss Georgette Truen. Good evening, Miss Truen. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Davis. I'm doing good.
All right, on this version of the late night show, what are we discussing?
We're going to be discussing CPS and their tactics to bully you to sign a safety plan.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, so CPS, as you guys know, when they first contact you, they tell you to sign a safety plan. If you don't sign the safety plan, then they say that they will get a court order to remove your children. And that the only way to make sure that your children are not removed is if you sign that safety plan. Now, I want you guys to hear it from Attorney Davis. Even though he has it, he spoke about it, seems like 100 years now since he's been doing shows. But even though the man is not 100 years old, but still, he's been doing shows. And every time he has a show, he always says, do not do anything without an attorney present or an attorney, consulting with an attorney, a CPS defense attorney, not a criminal attorney, not a family law attorney, not none of that. It has to be a CPS defense attorney. Oftentimes you guys call me and say, well, we already spoke to another attorney in Beverly Hills or an attorney in Wilshire. And he said, or she said, sign the safety plan. Then why are you calling us after you do the damage to your case? So can you please explain to everyone again, in your own words, why it's important for them not to sign the safety plan?
Well, I think I told you this the other day. It's on a case-by-case basis. Without doing a thorough investigation and interview of the prospective client and person who's going to be signing a safety plan and going over the safety plan, it probably isn't the best strategy for you to just sign the safety plan. Every case is different. So let's say the safety plan has A, B, and C on it, but your case really is more attuned to D and E. So unless somebody reviews the safety plan, does their own investigation, they're not going to know whether you should be just signing a safety plan. So make sure that before an attorney or anyone tells you that you should sign the safety plan, make sure they do an investigation and go over it. I'll give you an example. I have some clients that were recently investigated for domestic violence. But the safety plan had on it domestic violence counseling, which made sense, but it also had drug testing, substance abuse counseling, parenting class, individual counseling, to address family issues. Well, all of those were ridiculous. And in my opinion, are just burdensome to the person or to the parent. And I can only think of one reason why the social worker would do that. They'll tell you it's to keep your family safe and to help you and your family. But in my opinion, it is, to help raise funds for that social worker's department. I think we lost Miss G. Hold on a second. Let's see if she's texting me. Yeah, we lost Miss G. I'll text her. So while we're waiting for her, I see some comments. Betty Jo, it says, can they stop parental rights if a parent is in a treatment center getting help that they need? Betty Jo, that's a very good question. The answer is, well, it depends. In a lot of cases, they can't, and in a lot of cases, they can. So, Whether they can or not is very fact specific. It depends on the procedural aspects of the case. It depends on the timeline, what hearing, what module you are in the case. But I have seen that happen, and it can be done legally, unfortunately, for the parent. Miss G, we lost you. What'd you do? Sign off by accident?
I have no idea. My connection is a spectrum. What can I say?
Okay. Anyway, so I answered that question. You may have not heard all of the answer. What are they? What's your next question?
My next topic to discuss is explaining to the relatives, family members, why is it also not wise for them to speak to the social workers? Because oftentimes what they say to the relatives is that we're going to give you placement of the grandchild or grandchildren, and we're going to do a home assessment or something like that. And then all of a sudden they leave the child with the relatives for a couple of weeks. They come back, remove the children, and then they tell the relatives, oh, you have a record against you from 40 years ago, or that the home is not safe for the children, or they will come up with any type of excuse, and then all of a sudden they remove the child or the children from the relatives and then place them in a foster home. Now, the parents will tell the social workers, we have relatives in Australia or in Florida or in San Diego or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden the social workers like, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. They give them like kind of like the runaround. I call it the witch hunt, right? They kind of leave the parents not knowing what to do anymore and confuse matters. And then the grandparents think that they're going to get the children back eventually, right? But they're not, because they're not part of the case. And that's what, after 6 months or 12 months, the social workers are going to say, you're not part of the case. We're going to do the adoption. So why is it important for the relatives not to speak to the social workers, and or what type of legal actions the relatives must take in order for them to be part of the case?
Excuse me. That's kind of a tricky question and a tricky dilemma. Because if relatives talk to the social worker, they may say something that will injure the case for the parents or injure the case for themselves. And I can't tell you how many times social relatives have told me, I really shouldn't have talked to that social worker because what I said, ABC, was twisted and turned and used against me.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the tricky part of it, because we're dealing with human beings. When they come in, when CPS comes in and takes these kids, everybody's in a panic. The parents, and especially the grandparents. Me being a grandparent now, I know, what it means to have a grandchild. And so you get these aunts and uncles and these grandparents who panic, and they think, or they are led to believe, that they can get these children in their home if they just talk to the social worker. And it's not true. Is it ever true? Yes. But in my experiences, more times than not, it's not true. They have, social workers have their own agendas, believe it or not, their own personal and professional agendas.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes placement of the kid with grandma or grandpa is not in their agenda. Why? Well, there could be many, many, many reasons. And you mentioned something about placement of the children out of the country and out of the state, or even out of the county where the case is. The law is that the children should be placed with relatives as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, what happens in cases is social workers try to convince parents to object to the placement of the relative that's out of town, out of the state, or out of the country. And they can tell them many things like, well, if you place the child there, you're not going to get regular visitation. The problem becomes that if you never reunite with the child, and relative didn't come forward early enough, they're not going to give that child to the relative because the argument's going to be made that the child has a bond, physical, psychological, and emotional bond with the caretaker, and especially where the child is young, newborn or something. They'll say that the child has bonded with the foster parent. And, hey, grandma, you're just out of luck. So if you are seeking to get a relative child out of CPS foster care, you better get an attorney or at least talk to an attorney about what you can do.
Not any attorney. Make that very specific when you say that. Make it clear,
Right.
please.
You would want to get an attorney that's experienced in CPS. But here's the thing that I was going to say, Georgette.
Mm-hmm.
I want relatives to beware of falling into a trap set by a very, very nice social worker.
Yep.
So, keep it business, keep it professional, get an experienced lawyer, and that lawyer will file the appropriate motions and paperwork to get that child to you. Don't rely on the goodness of your heart or the goodness of the social worker's heart to try to get this child. What I've seen many, many times in almost, 37 years of doing these cases,
Mm-hmm.
the grandparents think that the social worker is on their side and think that the social worker is going to give them the child. And, of course, if you hire an attorney, it's going to be expensive. So, on the basis of trying to save money, they won't get that attorney, and then they'll call me 12 months later, and they'll cry on my shoulder, and they'll say, "Well, basically, I got tricked. I got tricked by the social worker, and the social worker stole the child from me." Yeah, it happens all the time. Why? Because you think what I'm saying isn't going to be accurate for your case because you're such a good talker, you're such a good convincer that the social worker would never do that to you. So come forth early as a relative and come forth often. All right. To be honest with you, if I were a relative, I wouldn't even contact the social worker. I would have my lawyer contact the social worker.
Right.
But of course, a lot of us think, well, we're so sweet and we're so persuasive and we're so nice. The social worker, of course, is going to give me the child. I don't know if you know this, Georgette, but out of all the cases that we have in my office at any one time, maybe 35% are people or relatives like grandparents trying to get custody of the kid out of
Mm-hmm.
foster care. You would think that I just represent parents and try to get kids back to parents, but that's not. A third of my business is representing relatives who are trying to get these kids out of foster care, and the social worker is recommending against it. It's amazing because the law is the child's supposed to be with the relative, and you would think that CPS would follow the law. But how many times do you see on the news that government officials don't follow the law? So don't think that it's going to be different in a CPS case.
Right. Especially the CPS case. But Deidre made a good point. Deidre Payne wrote, I feel like because my mom wasn't supporting me, that's why social workers gave my kids to my mom. Deidre,
Yeah,
that's like 100% of the time. Usually when the grandparent go against the mom, especially the mom, they're
but
all, go
I'm
ahead.
aware of it. I'm aware of a case right now
Mm-hmm.
where it's at the beginning, and the grandmother and the mother, it's a mother-daughter team, were together before the case started,
Yeah.
right? They were fighting together to get this child back.
Mm-hmm.
Social worker gets involved and places the kid in a foster home. But the social worker convinces the grandmother to turn on the mother
Mm-hmm.
with this promise. If you turn on the mother, and it's not said exactly that way, right? But if you turn on the mother, I'll give you the child. And to this day, they're probably about a third of the way through the case. Does the grandmother have the child?
No,
Absolutely not.
no.
But the grandmother now thinks the more I turn on my daughter, I'll save the grandchild and
Mhm.
I'll get the grandchild back. But what the grandmother doesn't realize is that in this situation, that's probably never going to happen.
Yep.
The social worker has their own agenda, both personal and business. And if the social worker was on your side, Grandma, you'd have the child right now. If the social worker believed in you and supported you, you'd have the child right now. If you don't have the child, something's wrong, and you better be wary. You better be wary. Next question, Miss G.
I just would like to say something real quick. There was a show that I did last year, and it had Araceli. She was a foster parent. I mean, sorry, yeah, a foster parent in LA County. Her and her husband couldn't have children, and she wanted to adopt. And the easiest way, she was told, is to be a foster parent for adoption. Now, Araceli mentioned on the show that the social worker, like around the holidays, they would text her pictures of a babies, different types of babies, and then would show her, like, if this is the baby you want, is this the baby you want? So basically, she realized that it depends on the person's pick, right? If they want a Caucasian baby, a Mexican baby, a Salvadorian baby, what Middle Eastern baby, doesn't matter. But I want you guys to be aware is that just because the social worker says, well, I'm going to place the child with the grandmother or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Because if that foster parent that wants to adopt says, I want this child, they're going to make up accusations against the grandmother.
Oh, we lost Miss Truman again. She's frozen up. While she figures out that she has been frozen, let's do this. Let's try to take some comments or questions from the audience. Betty Joe on YouTube asks, what kind of paperwork do you need to file for that? And Betty Joe, I'm sorry, to file for what? Betty Joe earlier asked, do they usually look for family placement for adoption over foster providers that has had the child for 2 years? The answer is no, Betty Joe. If the child's been there for 2 years, they usually go with the foster child. The foster parent. That's why I said you have to come and get this child early on, right at the beginning of the case. And if you're delayed by the social worker at all, more than a week before you had the child, you need to talk to someone. You need to talk to a lawyer. Okay, Miss G, we lost you again.
Welcome to Spectrum, everyone. I recommend never get Spectrum ever.
Are
Okay.
you physically connected by wire or are you using wireless?
Wireless.
That's the problem. On these live streams, you have to do wired.
Oh.
You have to get a network cable, connect your computer to the router.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure. I would need to make an appointment. Well, would need to tell them to come over and do that.
No, you don't. Just get a network cable, order it from Amazon, and I'll show you how to plug it in. Just on your phone. I'll, do a FaceTime and I'll show you where to plug it in on your router, and I'll show you where to plug it in on your computer.
Oh, but I would have to get the router from my office into the living room.
No. Oh, is it that far?
It's not that far. It's only a few steps away. But
The other thing you can do is you can get a long network cable. Like for less than $20, you can probably get a 50-foot cable. or
Okay.
100-foot cable.
I could
And
do
then
that.
you wouldn't have to move the router. You just have to, put the cord down.
Deidre
But
is
that's
probably
why
really like, oh my gosh, we're talking about this.
don't feel bad. Deirdre is having the same problem. Deirdre got a new computer, and Deirdre got the highest of high-speed internet.
I have it too.
And
I have it too.
she keeps freezing. And finally, I asked her, I said, "Are you on wireless or are you, on cable?" She said, "Wireless." I said, "Well, that's why you keep freezing. Because
Yeah,
wireless is not stable. It's not Spectrum. It's just not a stable connection, especially, where are you right now? In your living room, it looks like?
I'm in my
Yeah,
living room.
and if the router is in the bedroom, it's got to go through walls and everything else to get to you, right? It's not
Oh my
X-ray.
God. She said fiber internet. What is that? Wait, what is fiber internet? I
That's
don't
the
know,
high.
Deidre.
That's the,
I'm paying close to $200 a month.
yeah. You don't have fiber. They don't have fiber in that area.
Oh, okay.
But fiber is the highest of the high.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the area then, right?
Well, you know what? Deidre said it was Spectrum. I didn't think Spectrum, had fiber, but call your customer service and see.
I'm
Anyway,
gonna.
before we get like way off into the subject, let's go to another question.
Okay. We're talking about relatives' rights. Okay, you guys have rights. You just have to exercise your rights by getting a CPS defense attorney. Okay, that's important.
And you have to do it early,
Not wait.
It
Okay,
is
so
the
now,
law. Go ahead.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Um, the next thing is this: grandparents have a habit of telling their children, the parents, do everything the social worker tells you to do, and you will, you know, do the classes, do this, do that, and then you're going to get the kids back. That's not the right advice. So, with me, when it comes to relatives, I always have this sick feeling in my stomach because the relatives think they know what they're doing. They actually think the system works because they're probably old school and they're not aware. Please don't give your children advice because you don't even know what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing. As I told you earlier, when they come in and they take the kids, everybody gets frantic.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, they get frantic, and rightly so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they get desperate. Either they figure it out on their own or someone tells them something, and their advice is just do what the social worker says. Now, that is a strategy, okay? And in my opinion, my humble opinion of doing this, 37 years, that's a bad strategy. Because in theory, it may work or supposed to work. But in actuality, it may work 15 to 20% of the time. And I'm going to give you an example that happened today. All right. I represented a woman in Orange County whose first attorney told her, just do what the social worker says, you'll get the kids back. Okay. The lady did everything the social worker said. And when it came time to give the child back or children back, they didn't want to give the children back. They had other reasons, other things that happened in the case that it changed, like every case does. Every case is dynamic. Things change. And 2 weeks ago, we went there hoping to get the kids back. Oh, the lady's done everything. She hired me because she realized that the social worker wasn't going to recommend to give the kids back. even though she had done everything. So we set the case for trial. And I don't know if they thought that I wasn't going to go to trial or not, but they kept telling me up until last night, email from the prosecuting attorney, basically, we're not giving the kid back. So you have to go to trial. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. So we show up today. The judge calls the case. And right after maybe 15 minutes of testimony, one of the attorneys asks for a 5-minute break to speak to his client. And at some point in the morning today, I told the social worker's attorney, I said, my co-counsel here tells me that you are a very experienced CPS prosecutor and that you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you and I both know that you don't have the evidence to win this case.
Mm-hmm.
And, she had excuses about, how her client wouldn't agree. I won't go into the long tortured story, but suffice it to say, my client went home with her son today. So, sometimes when people tell you, do everything the social worker says and you'll get your child back or your children back, it's not true. I hate to say that. I wish it was. I guess if everything was perfect in the world, it would be true. But nothing's perfect in the world and nothing's static, meaning it just doesn't stand still. Things change, people change, things happen. And more times than not, I'd probably say 8 times out of 10, even if you do whatever the social worker says, you're still not going to get your children back unless you fight, right? Unless you go to trial. And call me a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes I get the impression people don't like to go to trial.
What do you mean,
And
people? Are you talking about the court or the?
everyone. They just rather submit on the report and, next case. I don't think I told you this, but this is a case that we're on a 3-way text with this client. I went to the hearing last week and I set the case for trial. No one said anything negative to me, but and maybe I was misreading it, but the body language and the facial expressions were like, why are you setting this for trial? We're thinking about reuniting the family within the next 90 days to 180 days. Why set it for trial? So my thought was, well, I'm setting it for trial because my client wants her children back. She's been away from her children for more than 6 months, right?
Yeah.
She hired me because she wants them back as soon as possible. So, but I have to say sometimes, I do set the case for trial and people look at me like, oh, okay, I understand.
But wait a minute.
The parents are getting a bad, or not being treated fairly. Or I'm reading the report and yeah, the parents should go back. I don't know why the social worker is not recommending it.
Mhm.
So that whole thing about just do what the social worker says, that's a 20%er. 8 times out of 10, that strategy is not going to work. So I put it like this: how much do you think your kids are worth?
There is
$1,000,
no price.
$1 million, $10 million.
Well, there is no price, Vincent.
Okay. Let's say they're worth $100 million. And are you going to use a strategy? Say you're in Vegas. Are you going to use a strategy that only works 20% of the time if you're
No,
going to gamble your 20 million, your $100 million?
no.
Of course not. You need a better solution. You don't need 20%, you need 80%, 90%. That's the strategy you need. Okay? And the strategy of just doing what the social worker says is not an 80 or 90 percenter. All right. And I feel like I'm qualified to say this because I've been doing this for a few decades. All right, a few decades. I had a client a couple weeks ago. She's 32. I've been a lawyer almost 40 years. And we kind of laughed about it, right? I said, you weren't even a twinkle in your dad's eye when I first became a lawyer. So please, you hired me because you thought I was an expert. Take my advice. You ever been to Vegas, Las Vegas, Georgia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You ever play blackjack?
I just did the machine.
Okay. So blackjack is a card game where you try to get 21. Okay. What if you bet your entire life savings and you had a 10 and a king? You had 20. And the dealer is showing one card only, and the dealer shows 5. Would you take a hit to try to get 21? Most people would say no, and that would be the right answer, probability and statistically speaking. But here's the key question. Why wouldn't you take a hit? And most people will tell you something like, well, I already have 20. Okay, which is the wrong answer. The right answer is you have less than a 5% chance of hitting an ace and getting 21. So that means 95 times out of 100, if you take a hit, you're going to lose. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
5 times out of 100, you're going to win because you're going to get an ace. But this is your life savings. So you have 20. If you take a hit, you're going to 95% chance of losing. Are you going to take a hit? No, because you have a 95% chance of losing. That same logic applies to these cases. Are you going to do a strategy that's a 20%er, a 40%er, a 60%er, an 80 or 90%er, or 95%er? Like, what strategy are you going to use to get your kids back? And the strategy that we are talking about, just do what the social worker says, is a 20% strategy,
I would say,
in my humble opinion. So that's the reason why, mathematically,
mm-hmm.
you shouldn't use that strategy, especially at the beginning of the case. You
Okay.
got it?
I
Next
want to. Cynthia Livingston asked a question. She said, "What can the social workers do and not do?" That's kind of like, what are they? I guess she meant to say, what is the power they have that they can do and cannot do? They can do whatever the hell they want. It's up to the attorney to, to expose their lies and fabrication, right? And Deidre made a point. She said the social worker think whatever they say and do is the law. And I think that answers your question, Cynthia Livingston. And that's it. If you go to trial, then these social workers actually have to make it look like what they are recommending have valid evidence. Now, it takes an attorney, a specific attorney, to actually bring those fabrication into light, right? because the judges believe whatever the social workers say. And I think Attorney Davis did a, thank you, Deidre, for that. I think Attorney Davis did a video on that when he said that by law, the judges have to take the recommendations of the social workers. Am I mistaken on that?
Well, the judges have to take them into account.
Account, I'm sorry.
They don't
I
have to do them, follow the social workers, but they have to consider them,
correct.
right? Where, they have to consider what you say, but by law, they have to consider what the social worker says more. Now, that doesn't mean the social worker actually wins the case, right? But it's the way the law is written. Somebody asked me to do a course. I told Deidre this, but I'm going to tell you this. I'm almost finished, about 80%. I have a CPS course for parents and attorneys. It's a 30-day course, and it's about an hour to an hour and a half each day. And I'm 85% through with it. I'm about to complete that and release it. So in 30 days,
what do you mean release it?
Put it out for people to see. 30 days, an hour to an hour and a half each day. But I break down the CPS case into a 30-day, chunk, one, each day. And it's more about, it not only tries to tell you what the law is, but it also tells you the issues you should be watching for in every case, because every case is different. We have tonight Deidre and Cynthia asking a lot of questions. I'm both of their attorneys. They have very different cases. So, part of the course, the first part of the course may be related more to Cynthia. Deidre's case would be more related to the ending part of the course. Every case and every scenario is different. So it's not a one size fits all, and that's what I try to tell people all the time. It's and they tell me they don't understand or it doesn't make sense, and I get it. This whole thing the whole concept of the government taking your kids doesn't make sense in most cases, right?
Yep.
So don't try to make sense out of this because you're going to drive yourself crazy. It just doesn't make common sense. But it is the law, and the law is enforced here with police and guns and things like that. So you have to obey. But you can get someone to help you navigate the system, and I think that's the most important thing.
But how can they navigate the system when the judges don't allow them? And I've noticed that the state judges, the CPS judges, are such arrogant, disrespectful.
Georgette, when's the last time you've been in court?
Oh my God. I think last time I was in court with you was it Sacramento? I can't remember.
No. The last time we were in court, listen. The last time we were in court together, it was, I won't say where the courthouse was, but it was in LA County. And our client had 7 children.
Oh, yes. I remember now. Okay. Yeah.
Now,
the judge was rude, by the way.
No, well, it's her courtroom, right?
So that gives her the right to be rude?
But listen. She ended up doing the right thing, didn't she?
Because of you.
Right. But that's the point.
What the?
I'm going to tell you something that I don't think I ever told you. In that case, the prosecutor and I had that same issue 5-6 years ago in front of another judge. And this is what happened. I argued to the other judge that the law said ABC. The prosecutor said, no, that's not what the law is, Judge. It's XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge, and I told the judge, I said, there was a law book on the table, a code on the table. I grabbed the code, I opened it up, and I read to the judge ABC. And I'll never forget the look on the judge's face. She kind of looked at that prosecutor as if to say, you've been misleading me for the last, whatever time she was been sitting on the bench, was like a year or two. Okay. The judge said, let me take a break. She walks off the bench, and I don't know where she goes. She comes back 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, and she says, you know what? Mr. Davis is right. The law says ABC. And she kind of gave that look to that prosecutor. Like, you've been telling me XYZ the last year or two, or however long she's been sitting there.
But
Right?
shouldn't the judges have?
But hold on. To the judge's credit, she said the law is ABC. Now, fast forward 5 or 6 years. You're at court with me with this client who has 7 kids. That prosecutor was arguing that the law was XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing. And I don't know if the judge knew that or not, but I grabbed a book, one of the codes is on the table all the time. I open up, I read it. And the judge, to her credit, says, you know what? You're right. It says ABC. Now, I don't know what was going on in that courtroom before that trial. All right. But I can tell you that I was talking to other attorneys on the case, and I was telling them the law is ABC, and they're looking at me. They don't say anything, but they're looking at me like I'm from Mars. Right? So, but the reason I'm saying this is because on both of those occasions, the judges did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what happens is that what happens a lot? In case you get the story from these people, parents, relatives, and you automatically think negative about the judge. And it's not true. You know what happens?
Mm-hmm.
You know what happens is that parent probably had a lawyer that didn't do what he or she was supposed to do in terms of evidence or legal argument. And of course they lost. I've told you many times, sometimes when people go to court, they think they're having a trial and all their attorney does is argue.
Mm-hmm.
9.9 times out of 10, they're supposed to lose. Right? And
Right.
of course, the client will tell you the judge made a bad decision. And that wasn't the case at all. What the case is that the attorney didn't give the judge any evidence to rule in their favor.
Okay, can I speak now, please?
But wait, do you understand that? Do you understand the difference?
I do understand the difference. I've been around you long enough to know the difference.
Okay.
However, Deidre asked the same question I was about to ask you. Okay. She said, but judges should have known the law, right? And that's the perfect question.
No. What makes you think that?
Because they're sitting judges making determination
you're
on
wrong.
people's lives with their children.
You're wrong. You just assume that. You have not read that anywhere. And let me tell you this. This is a classic example. When a person gets a court-appointed attorney, they think that they are getting Johnny Cochran. They're a licensed attorney. Everyone's like Johnny. No, You know every attorney is not like Johnny Cochran. You know what the law says in California about court-appointed attorneys? And I'm going to paraphrase. It says you get a warm body that has a license to practice law, right? And that generally knows the law. No, that ain't Johnny Cochran. Johnny Cochran is an expert in the law and an expert in trial advocacy. The
He
law in
was the
California,
best. I think he passed away. Yeah.
hold on. The law in California doesn't even say you get an expert in trial advocacy. So sometimes what happens is you'll get a court-appointed attorney who may have just passed the bar. How much trial advocacy experience could they have? Very little. How much of an expert could they be at the law? Well, probably not an expert. But you think that you're entitled to Johnny Cochran. And then you call me up and say, "Hey, I have a terrible attorney." Okay? And you're surprised about that. Well, they're supposed to be good and do this and do that. No, that's not true. You just think it's true. And that doesn't make it right or true. Same thing with judges. Okay? You think that they have to make the decision. If they had to make the decision based upon the law and evidence that they found, you wouldn't need a lawyer. You think O.J. Simpson won his case because he had a court-appointed attorney? No, he won that case because he had the freaking dream team. All right? So that case is no different from your case in CPS court. Are you going to persuade the judge? Are you going to argue the law, present evidence so the judge can hang his or her hat on? So don't tell me, oh, the judge did a bad job. No, it's probably you and your attorney did a bad job. Justice does not appear automatically to judges. Doesn't happen. Justice appears when the attorney presents the right admissible evidence, admissible, not inadmissible evidence, and makes the right legal arguments. Okay, so now you can say all you want, okay, because it's free speech. But I'm just telling you my almost 40 years of experience.
No, I believe you. You're the best. I already know that.
And the two most recent, I say 2 out of the 3 most recent times that we've gone to court, and you were experiencing the judicial process, why don't you tell the people what happened? You fell asleep in the courtroom.
Shut up! You keep bringing that up.
And the judges had to say, bailiff, remove that lady.
I did. I fell asleep because it was so boring. Oh my God, it was so boring.
But you know what? I will give you the credit. I'll give you the credit though. On that client that we had with the 7 kids, you stayed awake the whole time and listened to it.
You know why? Because the CPS attorney, oh my God, she pissed the shit out of me. She was making hand signals to the judge and going like this to you. Like, what the fudge did you just do?
Listen, I can tell you one thing for sure. That judge followed the law. That judge did what was right.
I didn't like her.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. She did what was right. Why? Why? Because I gave her the evidence and I argued the law. And as a judge should,
yeah, I was.
She followed the law. Now, If I was representing the mother, 9 times out of 10, the mother would have had another lawyer that wasn't as experienced as me in trial advocacy or in the law, and they probably would have lost. Just like Johnny Cochran and the Dream Team. If OJ doesn't have them, he's probably, death penalty or state prison for life, right? So it matters. It matters who is your attorney. We all know that, but we hate to admit it. Because the law is supposed to be fair and neutral. It is fair and neutral based upon the arguments and the evidence that you and your lawyer present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that part. But
Okay.
Deidre, by the way, your statement, Mr. Davis was probably cracking up. He was actually.
Deidre,
I think you were laughing so hard.
You will never know how much joy that brought me.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, as much shit as she talks, she goes to court and falls asleep. Not once. Not once. So we're in like Riverside someplace. She falls asleep in Riverside. Then 3 weeks later, in another courthouse in front of another judge, she's sitting right in the first row, Deidre, right in the first row. And you hear this like little hum, like a little snore. The judge kind of looked at me and I'm like, I don't know who she is, Judge. And everybody starts laughing and the bailiff gets up and, ma'am, you have to wait outside. I mean, there's nothing worse you could have done in the case. I guess you could have stood up and started cursing out the judge. That would have been worse. But to fall asleep in the judge's courtroom? Come on. What kind of BS is that? Deidre, I'm so happy it happened. It never brought me so much joy.
He's holding it against me for a long time.
Deidre is anytime she talks shit, there's something I can bring up that she can't. And the second time it happened, I was trying to get my phone out of my briefcase so I could take a picture of it.
Oh my God.
I was going to post it on social media. Here's Georgette helping me in court. Yes, Deidre, snoring too.
Yes, the guy came, the bailiff, he said, ma'am, you need to go outside. Oh my God. Vincent, you need to get over that, okay? It happened. It never happened again after that.
When I write my book, there's going to be a special chapter about how your assistant falls asleep.
You're so mean.
Guess what, Deidre? Deidre, it doesn't win me any extra points with the judge. Just in case you're wondering.
Oh my God. But it was boring. I do listen. The couple of times that I did fall asleep is because it was boring. There was no excitement. When there's excitement in there, then and it wasn't when Davis was talking. It was when the other attorney was talking. She was so boring. Like so boring. Just boring.
Deidre, both times in the front row. In the front row. And the judge can basically, from that elevation on the bench, can see everything. Literally everything.
Oh my God.
People in the audience. And there is Miss G.
Oh my God.
Representing me in my office.
You guys are being mean right now. Okay, it happened twice. That's it. Just twice.
She's only been 3 times.
Twice. It happened twice, Vincent. It did not happen 3 times. And also, remember, when we go to court together, I have no coffee. Remember, I didn't have coffee that morning.
Deidre, if she goes to court with me now, guess what? She has to sit outside the courtroom. I don't even let her in. Wait right here. Watch the witnesses. Keep them company.
Oh my God, that's true. Yeah.
And she wonders
why one time is bad enough.
Deidre, she wonders why she can't come in the courtroom now.
No, that's not true. I did go in the courtroom after that, but I just didn't fall asleep.
Yeah, one time.
That's not true, Vincent. I've been to court after that, but
the one time that you came in after that, I told you to wait outside, and you kind of snuck in, and I was already at the counsel table, so I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get up and say, "Get out of here."
But I didn't fall asleep. I didn't. I made sure I had my coffee and everything. I mean, it was just one of those. What did she say? She said, then when you get out of court, Miss G is driving somewhere else.
One time she went to Riverside County in Indio. There's a court out there in Indio. And I get out of court and I text Miss G. Like, where are you? She's like an hour away shopping. Can you pick me up in 5 minutes? Yeah, no problem. 20 minutes later, where are you? Oh, 5 minutes away. 20 more minutes after, like, where are you? 5 minutes away.
Stop, you're exaggerating now. And she's like, oh shit, Mr. Davis is done with court. That's so true, Deidre. I did that one time and like, shit, he's ready. Oh my God, that's so true. Oh my God. And then I told him I was 5 minutes away and it wasn't.
Okay, hold on. We're trying to give an educational show here. We've gone on to comedy routine. I'm getting ready to go to bed, late night show. Do you have any last questions for me? Okay, I guess no more last questions. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for showing up at late night. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Maybe Miss G will come to her senses by that time. All righty.
Oh my God.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for watching.
A vivid picture is encrypted in your mind as the critics get in line like they're witnessing a crime. But then you notice there's a shiver in your spine from the feelings of discontentment and bitterness combined. Heartbroken when you listen to the judges, another kid's innocence corrupted, and if you go against it, it's destructive. Consider this predicament the toughest, but we believe in a system fit for justice. Child Protective Services only pretends to save it. The one solution for this is worthy of instant praises. 30 years of experience with relentless cases. Allow me to introduce them. This is Vincent Davis, defending you when they don't think a mother fits the role. Is it juvenile dependency or government control? Observe the pain in their eyes. It's time for us to realize we are the last ones left. Put your faith